Yo, I got it. It's gonna be a legendary one. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Woo, legendary Cheep-Cheep. Psych! That's honestly how this entire game feels. It's just one punchline after the other by Nintendo, and it feels more like a punch straight to the face rather than a punchline for its fans. And after spending another week trying to 100% this game, I'm just gonna get right into my final thoughts on some things that I didn't cover in my review from last week, while also providing you guys with footage of how I achieved some of the, I guess, challenges and unlocked some of the trophies in Paper Mario Origami King. I won't be talking throughout the entire video. I'll be chiming in with my final thoughts here and there, as well as discussing some of the stuff that I've actually recorded and some of the strategy for certain trophies and achievements, like this one right here. So I found out that for that legendary fisherman trophy, where you need to catch both a legendary sized Blooper and a legendary sized Cheep-Cheep, you can actually only catch those at that last fishing spot on Full Moon Island. So if any of you were trying to get that done anywhere else, yeah. And here's the entire run through of Scuffle Island, which honestly took me quite a few tries to complete. It starts out pretty easy. Like, I mean, this guy right here, the Paper Macho Goomba, I mean, you know, he can't even hit you, honestly. As simple as getting out of his path when he charges, hitting him in the back, and then repeating that 3 times, and then after that you just gotta hit him with your hammer again 3 times, but it won't matter where. Also guys, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. I hope that if you did come by this video, it's something that actually interests you or something that you were looking for, and so I do hope that you watch it for any hints or help that you might need in completing your playthrough of Paper Mario Origami King. Always, I'd really appreciate a comment or a like, especially a sub if you guys find this content interesting and are looking forward to similar stuff in the future from me. I will be covering a lot of different games and a lot of different gaming topics, and the best reminder of when I upload a new video is to hit that subscribe button and get notifications from my channel. Now this run of Scuffle Island was edited by me so that there isn't any of the annoying cutscenes in between the fights, but these are the fights in the actual order that they happen on Scuffle Island. And there's really not much else to say about the first few. I mean, you got the Paper Macho Goomba, now the Shy Guy, now I'm starting the Koopa Trooper, and really it's kind of imbalanced. The first 4 bosses are super easy. You can see here that they all mostly have the same attack pattern, aside from the Goomba, which only attacks once and marches in a straight line. Then you have your wait period for you to be able to go ahead and attack him. The next 3 or 4 bosses just have the same pattern, except with 2 attacks in between, a chance to attack them yourself. The difficulty remains pretty easy for the first 4 bosses, and then out of nowhere there's a difficulty spike on the 5th boss. It's something that seems to be an issue with this game in general. I talked about that in my review, but I didn't think that that would also translate further into the extras, like these sorts of challenges and trophy areas. But unfortunately it does, even for, I would say, most of the trophy requirements, special extra content. But I think this is a product of Nintendo trying its hardest to make this game a product of mass appeal. It's not geared at anyone specific, it's geared at every single person, or at least So would Nintendo like to think. Getting back to this Scuffle Island series here, this is the one fight that I had a ton of trouble with. I mean, before this section right here, I took, 90 HP damage. It's pretty difficult to get the timing down perfectly to be able to attack the flying Koopa Troopa, especially since he has two forms of attacks. So both of them are the exact same thing, where he just goes into his shell and loads up to strike you. But there's one form where he flies at you much more slowly, and there's another form where he actually loads up in order to cover a larger distance. And so having to run away to create enough distance between you and the Koopa, and then also knowing when to time running towards the flying shell in order to hit the seal on it just at the right moment, takes a while. And I think it took me something like 7 or 8 tries before I actually beat that Paper Macho boss. If you feel like you don't want to continue for the last 2 Paper Macho enemies because of how much health you lose on the 5th one, you can actually regain a ton of that HP on the 6th boss, this one right here. These rolling boulders, if you manage to destroy them by hitting them with your hammer on the seal that's on them, which also requires some really good timing, usually result in you getting a heart, so you can pretty much restore your HP back to full, even though it's really not going to be all that useful because the last 2 bosses are very, very easy. In general, I still stand by thinking that Nintendo trying to force this game to be everything anybody could possibly want in order to appeal to the largest amount of people possible killed a lot of things for me. It's just not satisfying to see a game series that you loved get turned into something completely different, all for the sake of money. And I stand by my 4.3 out of 10 star original rating for this game completely. That being said, I think that there is a certain segment of people who will enjoy this game much more than I did myself, but those people aren't looking at this game through the lens of comparing it to previous titles in the series. And I also think that those people are, or rather that younger people will also enjoy this game much more, as they probably won't overanalyze certain aspects like I did, and also likely wouldn't have been exposed to previous titles in the series. And when I say previous, I mean pre-Sticker Star, to really be able to even grasp what the expectations for this game were. Oh, here's a quick treasure that I had missed on my original playthrough, and it's actually very, very kind of interesting and out there for this game. And finding this one doesn't actually count towards anything on its own, but it is required for you to be able to ultimately find all of the hidden treasures in the game. I just included this one because I thought this was kind of one that's a little bit out there and has a few steps to it. But yeah, going back to the appeal of this game, I'm not telling anybody that if they think they'll enjoy this and they really want to buy this, that they shouldn't. People should absolutely support a product that they feel good about, or they like, or they really want to see more of. But for one thing, I don't want to see more Paper Mario games like this. And I also think that if there's people out there who enjoy this game, then they are definitely missing out on much better puzzle games that have comparable graphics and definitely much better puzzles. I'd even go as far as to argue that this game is a basically poor man's Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I realize that sounds crazy, but hear me out. This game was touted by Nintendo as being more open world with puzzle solving elements, as well as RPG elements, while also giving other characters such as Bowser and Luigi a greater role in the story, to which I'm actually also going to come back to since that's a lie as well. But that's basically Breath of the Wild. It's an open world Zelda game that has a lot of the core Zelda RPG elements, as well as much more, and I guess better designed as well, puzzle solving in the 120 shrines, and a significantly better combat system, which is quite basic to pick up, but definitely rewards people who are actually determined to master it. By the way, this shuriken minigame, for which you also get a trophy for, I believe, scoring more than 100 points. I only have one tip for this one. Ignore the targets that are only worth 1 or 2 points and just focus on anything 3 or higher. At least that should be your priority. The only case where this isn't true is obviously when there are no high numbered targets. Then of course you should be trying to get the low numbered ones just to rack up some extra points. Doing speed rings and the ringer also made me realize just how simple the rotating combat system is in this game. Because I had done the speed rings trophy first before finishing the ringer, I didn't realize that every single combination that could appear, or rather lineup that could appear in speed rings, was one of the lineups from the ringer. So if you do these in order at the battle lab, as in do all of the stages of the ringer first and then attempt to do the 16 lineups in speed rings for the trophy, then it really won't be difficult at all. Completed 17 lineups in my successful run of speed rings, and they're all included here. But based on the ringer, there is a possibility of 30 different lineups that you can receive in any order during a playthrough of speed rings. Once again, you need to successfully complete at least 16 within 100 seconds in order to obtain the trophy. There's also a trophy for completing all 3 levels of the ringer, which doesn't really make sense to me, as it seems kind of redundant to include 2 trophies for pretty much the same exact thing. And redundancy in general is also a theme throughout this entire game, further proving that it's trying to appeal to as many people as possible with creating multiple trophies, for example, for the exact same activity, so that perhaps a younger audience or people who are less skilled at the mechanics, or perhaps just don't have as much time in their lives to perfect their craft, if you will, at playing this game, then there's trophies that are very easy to balance out the ones that are difficult even for an avid gamer like myself. Another example of this would be the trophy for finding all the origami toads, and then also the trophy for unlocking all of the concept art. There shouldn't really exist 2 trophies for that, as you need to find something like 95% of the toads in the game to receive the one for finding all of the origami toads. The loophole here is in the specifics, because not every single toad is folded up into origami. Yet you need to find every single toad in the game in order to have enough Toad points to unlock all of the concept art. Once again, it might be a 10 to 15 Toad difference between those two trophies, which makes them, in my mind, pretty redundant. And then you have all of the replayable battles, none of which I included in this video, because they're really not that much harder than they were the first time around. Yet, you still have to do every single one of them for a total of about 12 to 16 battles. And your only reward is a collectible treasure in the shape of Bowser. No trophy for that one, even though it's going to take you at least an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. This entire battle system is designed in an extremely strange way, and obviously I didn't like it from the start, but there was a part of me that just assumed that maybe I'm unfamiliar with it and I'm just, well, plain bad at it, and that perhaps the more battle encounters I would find myself in, the better I get at the battle system and I guess navigating my way through it. But doing this guide slash final roast of this game, and specifically doing speed rings and the ringer, made me realize that no, it's not me, it really is the battle system. From the get-go, it's oversold to you as being much more complex and intriguing than it actually is. And forcing myself to do these simple 2-move puzzles over and over in order to get these 2 trophies made me realize that really it's pretty simple. If you think about it in the terms that you're limited really by the moves, then you realize that all the possible combinations for battles and battle encounters in the game have to be built around the ability to complete them in either 2, 3, or 4 moves. So sure, the ones that allow you to make 4 moves within a turn are definitely much more complex than, well, exponentially more complex than the ones that only allow you to make 2 moves, but you only ever get 4 moves in a turn in boss battles. And I say all the regular enemy battles are pretty much divided 70-30, with 70% giving you only 2 moves per turn and maybe 30% giving you 3 moves per turn. And you realize this further through doing the ringer, which literally teaches you how to complete most of the possible enemy setups within 2 turns, or rather 2 moves. It's just very simplified. There's no possibility of the game giving you a lineup where you cannot complete it in the amount of moves that you are given per turn within that encounter. So obviously the amount of possible lineups is significantly decreased by that. That might have been a little bit hard to follow, but just trust me when I say that if you started this game, mastered the ringer, and subsequently speed rings right after you unlock them pretty early on in the game, then the rest of the game would be even more boring to you, because not only would you want to be getting through the regular battles as quickly as possible or even avoiding them altogether, but you'd be feeling the same way about the boss battles as well. Mind you, I didn't even come to this realization until well after I had finished the main storyline of the game. Not until when I started doing these challenges for this video. And I already thought that the game was way too easy. But once again, it's all about accessibility. Combat isn't designed for hardcore gamers. It's designed for gullible people who see Mario in the title and think, oh hey, my kids will love this, or oh hey, I remember playing Mario back in the 80s. Let's see if it's anything like that now. It's just sort of funny and tragic at the same time that this game is designed so well to be marketed to the masses, and yet there was still so much false marketing involved with the game. Really, Nintendo as a corporation just betrayed its hardcore fans, which is tragic more than anything, because the only reason that Nintendo can even afford to betray its hardcore fans is because its hardcore fans put it on the map years ago. Now, I gotta talk about the false advertising and what I meant earlier when I was saying that Bowser and Luigi aren't integral or even major parts of the story. Luigi was advertised as playing a major part in finding keys and helping you along your journey, which I wouldn't even say is half true. And obviously I'm biased because I loved the part that Luigi played in the original Paper Mario trilogy, so I'd be jumping out of my seat if I heard something about Mr. L or the Waffle Kingdom. Oh hey, Mr. L and the Waffle Kingdom. That should have been the next Paper Mario game. But anyways, Luigi does indeed help you find keys for all sorts of different areas in the game, but the only say you have in him accomplishing that is being able to actually find Luigi in certain chapters of the game, and the game does everything in its power to steer you towards finding him. Other than the one instance of you hitting Luigi with your hammer in order to be able to jump onto him and then him spring up and throw you into the air so you can get up onto a really high ledge, there's no interactability with Luigi and you don't control him at any point in the game, and the entire character is designed as a complete shift from what we've seen of Luigi in the original 3 Paper Mario games. And what I mean by that is that in the original trilogy, Luigi sort of seemed desperate for acceptance from his brother Mario, and feeling underappreciated and just feeling ignored by the player, I suppose. So every time you found Luigi or tried to interact with Luigi, talk to Luigi in, for example, Super Paper Mario or the Thousand Year Door, Luigi would just go on these long monologues trying to, I guess, build his life up to being more exciting than it actually was. And he would just talk your ear off at every possible moment because he wanted to be heard, he wanted to be noticed. Yet here, it's like every single time you find him, he's just chilling, and as soon as you tell him that he found the wrong key, it's all like, "Mamma mia, bro, looks like I'll catch you later." And he just runs off to God knows where. And sure, you can argue that, oh well, that makes sense because he wants to be accepted and noticed by Mario so bad that as soon as he realizes that he's wrong or he failed, he just runs off to try and help his brother. But it sure as hell doesn't come off that way in this game. It comes off as if he's stupid and every single thing that he does in this game is done erratically and without any thought. And Bowser likewise is having a complete personality shift in this game. Whereas in Super Paper Mario we've seen, well, I guess in the Thousand Year Door as well, we've seen Bowser having sort of a slight kind aspect to his personality, but it's a kindness that's really driven more by being a logical, sort of rational evil being rather than pure kindness. But then Origami King completely throws that out the door, and right from the start Bowser is this, or rather represented as this single father struggling to create the best life for Bowser Jr. Which, like, it's funny and it's all good to give Bowser that sort of personality trait. It's not something we've seen before, and I wouldn't have a problem with it if not for the fact that it's just not true to the character, and like many other situations in the game, feels like it was just put into, I don't know, either mock the fans or maybe mock the creative people behind the designs originally. Like, I'm not exactly sure who originally created the sort of, I guess, archetype for these characters when the original Paper Mario came out and then subsequently the Thousand Year Door. But if it's not the same people that are working on the series now, then it feels a lot like what Naughty Dog did with The Last of Us 2. And that scene where the guy ends up spinning on Joel's dead body. In case you haven't noticed, this is all of the concept art in the game. I decided that rather than show where I found every single toad, I would just unlock all of this and show it to you guys in case you're interested but either don't have the time, the patience, or really don't care enough to find every single toad yourself and see the concept art. Overlook Mountain might actually be one of the best starting areas in the Paper Mario game. Another shift when it comes to characters and just in general how much, I guess, the specific characters do, or how big of a role they play within the story, would be Peach. And I'm not sure why I didn't even think about this earlier, but basically Peach plays no part in this game at all, which again is a total shift from the original trilogy, with there being entire sections where you play specifically as Peach in the original Paper Mario, in Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door, and her being one of the 4 playable characters in Super Paper Mario. Here she literally has like 4 or 5 lines of text. But I guess now, in retrospect, it makes sense, as there have been some interviews with the director of the game since my review last week, and it was detailed that the series is trying to focus on the gameplay more than the story, with there really not being not being a story, which obviously I complained a lot about in my review, but I chalked it up to just being a horrible story, and not that the team behind the game was specifically told not to have many story elements and just focus on the set pieces and interesting events that happen throughout the game. But that all just solidifies what I already thought about this game, and having played it extensively for another week following my review really further reinforced all the things that I had already said and thought. Another point I wanted to bring up was what I had originally said about there not being any game-breaking bugs or crashes in this game. And as it turns out, I was very wrong, because there is in fact a game crashing bug and also a glitch where if you use up your VIP pass into the Spring of Colors and don't finish the level, or rather don't finish that portion of the story, and then you either, I believe, teleport or just leave by any means, then you're unable to go back. So that's kind of crazy, and I believe Nintendo already said they're looking to fix that, but it just goes to show you how little they cared about this game and how quickly they try to push it out into the market because they know that Mario is marketable to the masses with this sort of approach. Once again, I'm not knocking Nintendo for trying to make as much money as possible. That's the goal of any company, to be as successful as possible and make as much as possible. But there's just a certain point where you have to look at how you're doing it. In the entertainment world, we'd call people like that sellouts. And really, I guess in the gaming industry, you can call Nintendo sellouts as well, based on the fact that they are making more and more and raking in more and more cash at the cost of appeasing their hardcore fans. And I've said it before, I just think that's lazy design. Because if you create a product that's well designed, just in general a good product, then it doesn't have to be marketed to every single person in order for it to be accessible to everybody. Just look at Super Mario Odyssey. That game is amazing. It won Game of the Year awards. Everybody's heard about it. And yet, that's not a game that was marketed to everyone. That was a game that was pretty obviously a hardcore, basic Mario platformer. So why is it that that was something that could have been done with a Mario game, but it's not something that could have been done with a Paper Mario game? It feels like something that you'd see happening in the auto industry with car makers, with one car maker trying to have a mid-size SUV and a full-size SUV and a compact in order to reach with their grubby little fingers into every single possible market segment imaginable, and then having to cut production on one or two or even three of those models because they're basically stealing customers from themselves. And also there was no market segmentation, I guess, necessary in order for their best car to stay relevant and appeal to people who might not have been looking at that specific type of car in the first place. I'm just overall disappointed in this game. Like I said before many times, and I think after having played it extensively this week, I'm even more disappointed than I was when I had just finished it, because there really were some amazing aspects. I mean, look at some of this concept art here of the Vellumentals. And this is just some of the designs. Although I didn't love the graphics, there's some things that were done just so well and so intriguingly that, you know, they had potential. And the same thing goes not just for the graphics, the same thing goes for the collectibles, the same thing goes for all the extras, the same thing goes for the story, the characters. Heck, even some of the puzzles were kind of interesting. Then all of that is juxtaposed with the garbage elements in this game that, like, are so bad that there's just no justifying them. There's no reason why there's no partners. There's no reason why the weapons have to degrade when you don't even really use them ever. There's no reason why in 2020 a story-driven game has absolutely no post-game, no difficulty setting, and no way of creating a new save without destroying your old save unless you create a new account. It's like Nintendo is trying to do the most with the least possible amount of effort, because they know that millions and millions of people will buy their product no matter how good or how bad it is, and that all the hardcore fans that they're betraying are just going to try it and say, well, at least they did this good. Oh, well, this is a step in the right direction. But does it really matter how many steps in the right direction you're taking if either way you're heading towards a cliff? This game banks on being a product of the House of Mario, when in reality it's been produced by the House of Mediocre. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Hope you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and Tuesday I'll be dropping a quick video on my No Man's Sky Capital Freighter base. And for Saturday I'll be switching gears and reviewing the Modern Warfare 2 remaster, as that is one of the PS Plus games for August. Peace, baby!